At my father's annual family dinner, my husband calmly confessed that he'd given my car to his mother. Not just any car. The white Tesla Model S my dad bought me after my mom died, the one registered in my name. Rain dripped from my hair onto the marble floor, while my father's smile froze, then vanished. He stood silent and walked to his office. A door clicked shut. A phone call. The words stolen vehicle and my name. Minutes later, a police cruiser rolled up the driveway. Behind the officer stood a woman from my husband's past holding a folder full of secrets. Everyone thought this was about a car. They had no idea it was about me. Before I go any further, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by someone who claimed to love you. Trust me, this story goes places you won't see coming, and you don't want to miss what happens next. I guess the only way to explain how I ended up standing in my father's doorway soaked through and shaking is to go back to the beginning, back to the spring morning when everything still felt light, hopeful, before the cracks began to show. My 29th birthday had been one of those rare days when the air smelled like new beginnings. The magnolia trees in my dad's backyard were blooming their petals, drifting lazily in the breeze, landing on the white tablecloths Dad insisted on setting up for the brunch. I remember the clinking of champagne flutes, the low hum of jazz from the outdoor speakers, and my father watching me with that soft, protective smile he hadn't worn since Mom died. I didn't know it then, but that smile would matter later. Jason had his arm around my shoulders, squeezing me every few minutes like he wanted everyone to see he belonged in the picture. Dad didn't seem to mind. He'd always tried to treat Jason kindly, maybe because he worried I'd close myself off after Mom passed. Maybe because he believed Jason loved me. I believed it too. Come outside for a second," Dad said as he wiped his hands on a cloth napkin. His voice had that quiet excitement he used to get when surprising me with silly things, an ice cream stop after school, a new sketchbook when I was little. I followed him down the stone steps to the driveway, still half expecting a cake, or maybe a framed photo of me and Mom. Instead, sitting in the round driveway was a white Tesla Model S, wrapped in a red bow the size of my torso. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The sun hit the paint just right, sending a bright, clean reflection into the air. I covered my mouth with both hands, suddenly 10 years old again, overwhelmed by the world's kindness. "Dad," I whispered, "this is too much." He shook his head as if he'd been waiting for me to say that. "Nothing is too much for my girl. Especially not now. Now." That word pierced something in my chest. Now as in after Mom. After the hollow, quiet months where every room of the house felt like it had lost its purpose. I hugged him, feeling the faint smell of cedar from his cologne. His hands, big, calloused, steady, held the back of my head like he used to when I cried as a child. In that moment, it felt like the world would stay gentle. It didn't. Jason jogged over, already holding his phone up. "Emily, stand by the bow." "Babe, this is incredible." He sounded genuinely thrilled, and I clung to that. I wanted to believe the brightness in his eyes the way he pulled me into a picture and posted it instantly with a caption that read, "My wife is blessed." I didn't know it then, but that caption would come back to haunt me. My Aunt Monica arrived late, walking across the patio in her dark blazer and flats, always looking like she'd come straight from court even at family gatherings. She hugged me, kissed my cheek, then lowered her voice. "Looks beautiful, sweetheart. Just remember, keep the paperwork in your name. Don't sign anything you don't understand." I laughed it off because that's what you do when you don't want advice to be true. "Monica, it's just a car." "It's never just a car," she murmured before walking toward the brunch table. I didn't know it then, but she was warning me about the exact storm that would hit me 6 months later. Those early weeks with the Tesla felt surreal. The car glided so quietly that the first time I pulled out of my school parking lot, I panicked because I couldn't hear the engine. My students would press their faces to the classroom windows whenever I parked outside. "Miss Walker, your car looks like a spaceship," one of them said. I loved their wonder. It reminded me of why I became a teacher, to watch eyes light up, to make the world feel bigger for kids who were still figuring themselves out. Jason seemed proud of me, or at least that's how I interpreted his enthusiasm. He offered to wash the car every weekend. He charged it every night like it was a ritual. He'd sit in the driver's seat just to explore the touchscreen. One night after dinner, he rested his hands on the steering wheel and said, "You know, Em, your dad really trusts us. This car, it's basically part of the family now. Us. Family. I wanted to believe him because I wanted a marriage that felt effortless like the ones people posted online. I didn't know it then, but Jason wasn't talking about building a life with me. He was talking about absorbing mine. The first red flag was small, almost invisible. I came home from school one afternoon and found an old silver sedan parked in our driveway. Jason was in the garage leaning against his toolbox, scrolling through his phone. "Whose car is that?" I asked. He didn't even look up. Temporary. Mom's car died again. "I'm letting her borrow something from a guy at work." His tone was flat dismissive, annoyed that I'd even asked. But Jason could be moody, so I let it slide. I didn't know it then, but sliding would become a pattern. That night, I overheard his mother on speakerphone. Our walls were thin. Her voice pierced straight through. Finally, she said, "You're doing something useful for me. That girl's father gives her everything while I struggle with nothing." The words stung more than I expected. I froze laundry, half folded in my hands. Jason mumbled something in response, too quiet to hear. Carol snapped back, "Don't defend her. I'm your mother. I come first." I felt something twist in my stomach. I didn't know it then, but this was the first moment Jason chose her over me, not with actions yet, but with silence. 2 weeks later, the Tesla wasn't in the garage when I got home. Jason told me he'd taken it for a wash. The next time, he said he'd loaned it to a coworker. The next, he was checking a weird sound. One lie is a pebble. A pile of them becomes an avalanche. I didn't see it then. I only felt the cold shift under my feet. And then came the afternoon he didn't know I'd left school early. I didn't know it then, but following him that day would be the beginning of the end. I left school early that day because something in my chest felt tight, like a string pulled too far. Jason texted that he'd be in a late meeting, that I shouldn't wait for dinner. The message was too clean, too practiced. A template he'd used before. I stared at it for a long moment, feeling the quiet dread settle under my ribs. I asked my coworker Megan if I could borrow her car, pretending mine was making a strange noise. She tossed me her keys without hesitation, joking, "If you catch your husband cheating, you owe me Starbucks." I forced a laugh, but my palms were already sweating. Jason walked out of his office an hour later. No meeting, no rush, no stress. He strolled like a man with nowhere to be, spinning his keys in his hand. Moments later, my white Tesla rolled out of the parking structure. The sight of him behind the wheel sent a shock of betrayal through me, so sharp I had to grab the steering wheel of Megan's car just to steady myself. He didn't turn toward home. He drove in the opposite direction, toward the older part of town. I followed at a distance, praying he wouldn't glance back. The streets grew narrower, the houses smaller, the sidewalks cracked. The sun dipped behind rooftops, throwing long shadows across the road. Then he pulled into a familiar parking lot, the apartment complex where his mother Carol lived. He stepped out of the Tesla, dusted off his shirt like he was arriving somewhere important. He pressed the buzzer. Within seconds, Carol appeared in the doorway, wearing a blouse far nicer than the sob stories she fed him would suggest. Her hair was freshly styled, her nails looked manicured. She didn't look like someone whose life was falling apart. She looked comfortable. Jason placed the Tesla keys in her hand. Not lending, giving. Like the car had always been hers. She smiled and kissed his cheek, then slid into the driver's seat with an ease that told me this wasn't new. She adjusted nothing. Not the mirrors, not the seat, not the steering wheel. Everything was already set for her. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat there watching the car I cherished pull out of the lot, driven by someone who looked at me as if I were a spoiled inconvenience. When Jason left, calling an Uber as casually as breathing, I stayed parked for 10 minutes, listening to my own heartbeat thudding against my ribs. It felt like the world was trying to warn me, like something bigger was unraveling beneath the surface. That night, he walked through the door, humming. He kissed my forehead, thanked me for dinner, joked about his never-ending meeting. I studied his face, the way he avoided my eyes, just enough to stay convincing. I wanted to confront him, but something in me whispered, "Not yet. Not until you understand the full picture." I checked the Tesla key that evening. It hung on the hook like always. I didn't know there were 2 copies. The next few weeks were a quiet education in deception. Every Tuesday and Thursday, the Tesla disappeared. Every weekend, it was gone for long stretches. I checked the odometer. It jumped by hundreds of miles, sometimes overnight. My commute was 8 miles round a trip. The math didn't lie, even if Jason did. One Saturday, I opened the glove compartment to retrieve napkins and found a handful of receipts instead. Grocery stores near Carol's apartment, a nail salon, a diner she loved. Small purchases, but all in her neighborhood. All on my car. I took photos of everything. When Monica came over unexpectedly, I finally broke. I showed her the pictures, the patterns, the receipts. She listened without interrupting, her eyes narrowing more with each detail. Then she asked for the insurance papers. She scanned them quickly until she froze. Then she turned the page toward me. "Emily, did you sign this?" My heart slammed against my ribs. The signature looked like mine. The curls, the slant. But I had never seen the document. Never approved adding Carol as a primary driver. "No," I whispered. Monica exhaled in a way that wasn't surprise, but confirmation. "This is fraud, and if he's willing to forge documents for insurance, you need to check if he's touched anything else." I didn't know it then, but there was more. Much more. Over the next few days, I searched in places I'd never bothered checking before. A drawer in Jason's desk. The glove compartment again. Under the passenger seat. And that's when I found it, a folded photocopy of a loan application. The breath left my body. On the last page, written in Jason's handwriting, was the VIN number of my Tesla, listed as collateral. He had been planning to use my car to secure a personal loan. I sat in our dim kitchen, the smell of burnt coffee lingering from the morning, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. My hands shook as I held the paper. I felt like I was looking at a stranger's life, not my own. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I needed him to say the truth out loud. I needed him to reveal himself, not fight his way out of accusations. 3 days before my father's annual dinner, I made my move. At breakfast, while Jason scrolled his phone, I said, "My Honda's making horrible noises. I'm taking the Tesla this week." His fork paused midair. "You can't. Why not?" He hesitated just long enough to tell me everything. "Because my mom has appointments. She needs it." Something inside me snapped cleanly, quietly. "So your mother has my car." He set down his fork with a loud clatter. "Emily, stop acting like a child. You have options. My mother doesn't." "You forged my signature." His face went white, then red. "You don't understand." "No," I said softly, "but Dad will." His hand tightened around the edge of the table. "Don't bring your father into this, Jason," I whispered. "You already did." In that moment, I realized the marriage I'd been holding together with hope and excuses was already gone. I didn't know it then, but the next 48 hours would burn everything to the ground. If the birthday brunch had been the beginning of the fairy tale, then the next 6 months were the slow unraveling, thread by thread, lie by lie, until the whole thing sat in pieces at my feet. The strange part was how quietly it all fell apart. Not with screaming, not with betrayal thrown into the open, but with small, careful cuts I didn't notice until I was already bleeding. The first cut came the week after I followed Jason to Carol's apartment. He came home late again, dropping his backpack on the couch, stretching like a man who'd worked a long, honest day. He kissed the top of my head, asked how my lesson plans were going, commented on the lasagna like nothing in the world was amiss. "You're home early," he added casually. I nodded. Staff meeting ended sooner than expected. He didn't flinch, didn't ask any questions. He just ate dinner, joked about a funny YouTube ad he'd seen, then went into the living room to watch TV. It should have comforted me that he seemed so normal. Instead, it felt like standing across from a stranger who wore my husband's face perfectly. 2 days later, the Tesla vanished again. "I'm getting it washed," Jason said. On a Wednesday night at 8 p.m., I asked. He shrugged. "Shops are open late. It's convenient." Convenient. That word tasted bitter. But I smiled and nodded because I wasn't ready yet. Not ready to confront him. Not ready to admit that the man I married had turned my life into a stage where he played the hero while writing me into the background. I didn't know it then, but the background was where he preferred me. The next week, the electricity bill came in unusually high. I opened our bank portal to pay it and saw several small charges from a cafe near Carol's building. $10 here, $8 there. 12. Small enough to ignore if I didn't know what I knew. I scrolled further. Nail salon. 3 separate visits. Diner receipts. a local grocery store that wasn't ours. All clustered around the days the Tesla disappeared. My chest tightened. My hands trembled over my laptop trackpad. It wasn't the money that bothered me, it was the ownership. The entitlement. The fact that another woman was treating my life like a resource. When Jason walked through the door humming, tossing his keys into the bowl by the counter, something in me cracked. "How was your meeting?" I asked. He poured himself water. Long, boring, you know. I watched him drink, his throat sliding up and down. He didn't look guilty. He never looked guilty. That was the terrifying part. The next escalation came subtly. In my classroom. A Tuesday morning, Megan walked by my room with a coffee in hand and peeked inside. "Your spaceship isn't here today," she teased, glancing at the parking lot through the window. I forced a smile. Jason needed it. "That guy must really love driving it," she joked. I laughed politely, but the words hit with unexpected weight. Love driving it, love using it, love giving it away. As class ended, one of my students tugged my sleeve. "Miss Walker, how come your husband gets to drive your cool car more than you do?" The innocence made my throat close. "I let him borrow it sometimes," I said. "Oh," the little girl replied. "My dad borrows my mom's car too, but she gets mad. She says he drives like a raccoon." The class laughed. I laughed with them. But inside, something twisted. When school ended, I drove home in my Honda, the engine rattling like a loose jar, the AC wheezing. The contrast between my car and the Tesla felt sharper than ever, like my life was split into halves, the one I was supposed to be living and the one someone else had taken. That evening, I checked the Tesla's mileage again. Another 100 miles gone. I opened the glove compartment and found a new grocery receipt. Carol's neighborhood again. I took pictures, labeling them in a hidden album on my phone. By week 4, I discovered the next twist. I was cleaning the living room when I noticed Jason's briefcase half open on the coffee table. Papers stuck out. Normally, I never touched his things, but instinct made my hand move before I could stop it. Inside were documents, messy, half-folded, as if he'd shoved them in carelessly. Phone bill, pay stubs, and then a photocopy of a loan application. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. It didn't seem real. My eyes scanned the lines once, then again, then a third time. Borrower Jason Reed. Purpose personal loan. Proposed collateral vehicle Tesla Model S. VIN. My VIN. Owner. Signature blank. My heart stopped. Jason hadn't just been giving the Tesla away to his mother. He'd been preparing to use it for a loan. A loan that had nothing to do with me. A loan I knew nothing about. In the corner was a handwritten note: "Ask Kara to review terms." Kara. I knew the name. His ex. The one he barely remembered. The one he said was insignificant. Cold washed over me, a slow wave that numbed everything it touched. When Jason came home that night, he walked right past me and kissed my cheek. "You look tired," he said. "Rough day with the kids." I stared at him, unable to speak, unable to breathe. He didn't notice. Or maybe he noticed and didn't care. Jason lived in a world where consequences didn't exist as long as he spoke, gently smiled at the right times, and blamed everyone else's discomfort on hypersensitivity. The next escalation came from Carol. 3 days later, the apartment door unlocked. I wasn't expecting anyone. Jason wasn't home. I turned the corner to see Carol, my mother-in-law, standing in the entryway holding a Tupperware container. "Oh," she said, startled. "Didn't expect you to be here." "I live here," I replied. She forced a smile. "Jason gave me a key, darling, for emergencies." The word emergencies hit like a slap. "I was just picking up some dishes I left here," she added. She hadn't left anything. She'd visited maybe twice in 3 years. Her eyes scanned our apartment with the comfort of someone who'd walked in many times before. She went to the kitchen, opened cabinets like she owned the place, tapped containers, frowned as if searching for something. Finally, she sighed dramatically. "Well, I can't find them. I need to go anyway. Long day ahead." "With the Tesla?" I asked. She froze. Her smile tightened. "Jason lent it to me for the day." "That's generous," I said softly. "It must be nice having reliable transportation whenever you want." Carol's eyes flashed. "Jason understands family responsibility. Something you'd know nothing about." She walked toward the door, then she turned back with a smirk. "You should tell your father to buy you another car. The Tesla's getting worn out. I need something dependable." The words were a knife, clean, precise, deliberate. After she left, I sank onto the couch, trembling. My world felt unreal, like someone had replaced my life with a poorly written play. That night, Jason came home humming again. "Honey, my mom stopped by earlier," I said. He froze. Just a flicker. Then he smiled. "Oh, she mentioned she left dishes here. She couldn't find them." He chuckled nervously. "She forgets things. She was driving the Tesla." His eyes sharpened. So I whispered, "Why wasn't I told she had a key to our home?" He didn't answer. Silence sat between us, thick, heavy, suffocating. Then he said, "Emily, my mother is family. Why are you being so dramatic?" The word stabbed deeper than I expected. Over the next week, I stopped pretending. I recorded the dates the Tesla vanished. I photographed mileage. I documented every lie. I checked our joint accounts and saw a $600 transfer I didn't recognize. The description read, "Cash App, L. Boudreau." I Googled it. L. Boudreau was a known loan officer tied to a private lending group. Not illegal, but dangerously close. Jason wasn't struggling. Jason was hiding. The final escalation before the breaking point happened during one of the quietest mornings of my life. We sat at the breakfast table. Eggs, toast, coffee. "Jason," I said calmly, "my Honda sounds awful. I'm taking the Tesla." He didn't even pretend to think. "No." "Why?" "Because my mom needs it this week." I set my fork down. "She can use her own car. She has back issues. She can use my Honda." He laughed bitterly. "That tiny thing? Don't be ridiculous, Jason," I said softly. "It's my car." He stared at me with a fire I'd never seen before. "You don't get it. You never get it. You have options. You have your dad. My mother has me. If you weren't so selfish?" The word hit hard. "I've watched you give away my car for months. I've watched you forge my signature. I've watched you lie to my face." His jaw clenched. "Don't twist things. I did what I had to do." "What you had to do," I repeated. "Yes," he snapped. "My mother deserves comfort. You'll never understand what it's like to struggle. You were raised on silk pillows." I stared at him, stunned. "How long has she been using the Tesla?" I asked. He hesitated. "Too long." "Months," he admitted finally. "And I'm not apologizing for helping my mother." I breathed in slowly. "Then you can explain that to my father on Saturday." His face drained of color. "Emily, no. Do not bring him into this." "You already did," I whispered. He stood abruptly. His chair scraped the floor. "If you tell him, he'll go nuclear. He'll call the police or something insane. If that's what the situation calls for," I said, "then he will." And in that moment, Jason knew he'd lost control, but he had no idea how much I already knew, or how much worse things were about to get. The 48 hours before my father's dinner felt like walking through a house filled with smoke. No flames yet, but the heat rising, the air thinning. Jason kept trying to act normal, but every attempt only made the tension more visible, like cracks spreading across glass under pressure. The morning after our explosive breakfast, he woke earlier than usual. I found him in the living room, fully dressed, pacing in front of the window. His phone kept lighting up, though he kept flipping it face down. "Emily," he said the moment he saw me. "We should talk." I poured myself coffee without answering. He tried again. "About yesterday." "There's nothing to talk about," I said. "You made your position clear." He exhaled sharply, pinching the bridge of his nose. "You're twisting things again. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. How else did you mean my mother deserves your car more than you do?" He flinched, then straightened. "I meant she's had a hard life. You haven't. So yes, logically, she should get it first." My stomach turned. There was no remorse, no realization, just justification. "Jason," I said carefully, "you didn't lend her my car, you gave it to her." "I didn't give it away," he snapped. "You're being dramatic. I just let her use it long term. It's still technically yours." Technically. A word used by people who knew they were wrong but wanted to feel right. I placed my mug down. "You forged my signature." He froze for a fraction of a second, then forced a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "Come on. Don't be ridiculous." I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table. A photo of the insurance document filled the screen. His face drained. "You need to understand," he said quickly. "I didn't have a choice. Insurance companies are a nightmare. It was just to keep her covered. You added her as a primary driver. You forged my name. That's a felony." He slammed his fist lightly against the table. "Stop making everything legal with you and your aunt's stupid paranoia." Stupid paranoia, I repeated, voice low. Is that what you call protecting myself? He opened his mouth, but the words got stuck somewhere between his pride and his fear. Then his phone buzzed again. He glanced down, face tightening. He slipped it into his pocket. Who keeps texting you? I asked. No one. Loan Officer Kara. His head jerked up so fast you'd think I'd slapped him. What did you say? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. His reaction said everything. He rushed toward me, not aggressively, but with desperation. Emily, please, please don't bring your father into this. You know he hates me. He'll exaggerate everything and turn it into a criminal case. We can fix this. We can talk to her. My car is not community property, I snapped. You don't get to negotiate on my behalf. Something in his expression hardened, then something cold, resentful, almost dangerous. You're willing to destroy your marriage over a car, he muttered. No, I whispered. You destroyed it over a lie. A silence stretched heavy and suffocating. Then, without another word, he grabbed his jacket and left. That night, he didn't come home until almost midnight. I pretended to be asleep. I heard him in the hallway, heard the faint click of the Tesla key, his spare being placed quietly in the drawer beside the bed. He thought hiding it would stop me. But he still didn't understand the simplest truth. I wasn't the same woman who let him explain things away with smiles and half-truths. The next day, Friday, was an eerie calm. Jason avoided me. I avoided him. We circled each other like ghosts, barely acknowledging one another. He made himself breakfast. I left for school without speaking. When I returned, the apartment was silent. Then at 8 p.m., a knock at the door startled me. Monica stepped in wearing a long gray coat holding a slim file folder. The moment she saw my face, she exhaled deeply. He's escalating, isn't he? She asked. I nodded. Did he threaten you? No, I said. Not yet. She sat on the couch and opened the folder. Good, because you need to be emotionally steady for tomorrow. She showed me printouts. Bank transfers. I hadn't noticed a timeline of the Tesla's mileage, screenshots of Jason's communications tied to the loan officer. She had done more in one day than I had managed in months. A man named Louis Boudreau, she said, tapping a page. Predatory lender. Your husband is in contact with him. I swallowed. So the car? Yes. He was preparing paperwork to use the Tesla as collateral. He couldn't finalize it without your signature, but he was trying to find a workaround. Possibly even forging it. My stomach turned. How much does he owe? We don't know yet. Tomorrow your father will ask, in front of everyone. I felt my breath hitch. Monica, Dad will explode. She shook her head. No, he'll be calm. That's scarier. It was true. My father's quiet disappointment could cut deeper than any shouting. Monica squeezed my hand. You'll need to be brave. Just stand your ground. Let Jason talk himself into a hole. Do you think he will? Men like him always do? She left shortly after reminding me to sleep, but sleep was impossible. I spent the night staring at the ceiling, listening to Jason pace in the living room on the other side of the wall. His footsteps were uneven, restless, anxious. Around 3 a.m., the pacing stopped. A door opened, closed. Silence. I wondered if he left again. I wondered if he was spiraling. I wondered if he regretted anything. And then I wondered why I still cared about whether he regretted it. By Saturday morning, rain had begun to fall. Soft at first, then heavier, tapping the windows like an impatient warning. The air outside was humid and cold, carrying that metallic smell storms bring. Jason was already dressed when I walked into the kitchen. He looked exhausted. Eyes red, shirt wrinkled, jaw tight. We don't have to go, he murmured, staring at his mug. You can tell your dad you're sick. We're going, I said. He rubbed his forehead. Emily, please, I know I messed up, but involving him will destroy me. You destroyed yourself, I replied. I'm just done covering for you. He lifted his eyes to mine. For the first time in months, I saw fear without arrogance. I love you, he whispered. Something inside me cracked, but not the way he intended. No, I said softly. You love what I give you. Those aren't the same thing. He didn't speak again. The taxi arrived at 2 p.m. Rain fell steadily, leaving streaks on the glass as we drove through town. Jason sat stiffly beside me, leg bouncing uncontrollably. Every few minutes he inhaled sharply like he was about to speak, but nothing came out. As we turned onto my father's long driveway, I felt my pulse quicken. The stone house rose behind the trees, lights glowing warmly behind the rain-drenched windows. It looked safe. solid, unshakable, the opposite of what I'd been living in. When Jason saw it, he whispered, "Please don't do this." But I wasn't the one bringing destruction to that house. He was. We stepped out under the portico rain, soaking our jackets in seconds. Inside, the scent of roasted vegetables and fresh herbs filled the foyer. Voices carried from the dining room, laughter clinking plates, the warm noise of family. Then the laughter stopped when we walked in. My Aunt Monica was the first to greet us. She kissed my cheek, then looked at Jason with the calm disdain only a lawyer could perfect. "Jason," she said evenly, "glad you made it." He swallowed hard. My father emerged from his study moments later, smiling warmly when he saw me. But then he noticed the taxi outside. His smile faded. "Sweetheart," he said, stepping closer, wiping rain from my cheek with his thumb, "why didn't you drive the Tesla?" That moment, the hesitation, the silence, the shift in my father's eyes was the pivot point of everything that came after. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Jason stepped forward, voice overly calm, trying to seize control. "I gave it to my mother," he said. "She needed it more." The room fell silent, a heavy electric silence. My father didn't speak. He didn't yell. He simply studied Jason with an expression I had only seen twice in my life, once at my mother's funeral, and once when a contractor tried to scam our family business. He turned without a word and walked toward his office. Jason panicked. "Sir, Mr. Walker, wait please." But the door clicked shut. Minutes passed, slow, suffocating minutes filled only with the sound of rain hammering against the house. Then we heard my father's voice through the door. "Yes, this is Thomas Walker. I need to report a stolen vehicle. Registered under Emily Walker." Jason went white. Monica folded her arms. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears, and somewhere deep inside me, beneath all the fear and shock, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Because finally, the truth was no longer mine alone to carry. The storm outside grew louder, as if the sky itself was reacting to what was happening inside my father's house. Rain hammered the tall windows. Wind rattled the lanterns along the porch, and the once warm dining room turned cold with tension. Jason stood frozen in the middle of the foyer. He looked from me to the office door, blinking rapidly, chest rising and falling too fast. He wasn't breathing, he was panicking. "Emily," he whispered, but I didn't move toward him. My father emerged from his study like a shadow stepping into light. His face was unreadable. In one hand, he held his phone. In the other, a thin folder thick with documents. Water dripped from the umbrella he'd brought in earlier, tapping softly onto the marble. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Jason," he said calmly, "step into the living room." Jason swallowed, then forced a smile that trembled at the edges. "Sir, Mr. Walker, it's not what you think. If you'll just give me a second to explain, you'll have all the time you need," my father replied. "And you'll tell the truth. Tonight." We followed him into the living room. The fireplace was lit, flames casting long shadows on the walls. The glow should have been comforting, but instead it illuminated every crack in our lives. My Aunt Monica stood near one of the bookshelves, arms folded. A few relatives lingered near the doorway, sensing something monumental was happening. Their murmurs faded as my father spoke again. "Emily, sweetheart, sit." I sat on the edge of the sofa. My hands were shaking slightly, but not from fear. Something steadier was taking root. Jason remained standing, wringing his hands. My father looked at him, utterly calm. "Tell me," he said, "why my daughter arrived here in a taxi instead of the car I bought her." Jason opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked at me for help, but I stayed silent. He licked his lips. I told you. I gave it to my mom. She needed it." My father didn't blink. "And you believed you had the authority to give away something that wasn't yours." "Sir, I didn't give it away," Jason insisted desperately. "I was letting her use it. It's still Emily's car technically." "How long," my father interrupted, "has your mother been using it?" Jason's voice shook. "A few times, here and there." Monica stepped forward. "That's not true, Jason. Not even close." She took the folder from my father's hand and opened it slowly. "In the last 6 months, your mother has driven the Tesla an average of 4 days a week. We have timestamps from parking garages, camera footage, and mileage logs. Shall I read them to you?" Jason's face crumpled. I don't know how you got." My father cut him off. "I want you to explain why you forged Emily's signature on her insurance documents." Jason's knees buckled slightly. He grabbed the back of a chair. I didn't forge anything. Her signature is on a form, Monica said flatly, adding your mother as a primary driver. We already confirmed with the insurance company. They emailed us the digital audit trail. The signature originated from your IP address. Silence crashed over the room. Jason shook his head. It must have autofilled. Or she signed something else and forgot. Stop, I said quietly. He turned toward me, eyes wide with pleading panic. Please, your dad is twisting this. He's making it sound like I saw the paperwork, I whispered. I never signed it. He opened his mouth again, then closed it. Sweat gathered at his temple. And while we're on the subject, Monica continued, let's discuss the loan application. Jason's head snapped up. Pure terror flickered in his eyes. My father nodded at her. Show him. Monica held up the photocopy pages, trembling slightly from the weight of what they meant. Jason Reed, she said you attempted to use the Tesla as collateral for a personal loan. With a lender who is, let's say, less than reputable. Jason's voice cracked. I didn't go through with it, but you intended to, Monica replied. Or you wouldn't have written the VIN number on the application, or consulted your ex-girlfriend to review the terms. A murmur rippled across the room. Jason flinched as though struck. I wasn't consulting her, he whispered. She just works. She works at my office, Monica said. Kara came to me the moment she realized the VIN belonged to Emily. She said she warned you that using property not legally yours was a crime, and yet here we are. Jason stumbled backward, shaking his head in disbelief. This is insane. You're all attacking me. I'm trying to help my mother. She struggles. She has nothing she deserves. My father stepped forward, his voice quiet but sharp. Your mother has $87,000 in savings. She owns her apartment. She receives steady income from both pension and Social Security. She is not struggling. Jason froze, mouth open, no words forming. How do you know that? He stammered. I ran a background check, my father said calmly. Jason nearly collapsed. You spied on my family. I protected my daughter, my father replied. The room held its breath. My mother, Jason whispered, works herself to death. Your mother, my father said, has manipulated you into believing she is destitute, so you will hand over everything Emily has. Jason's eyes reddened, his voice cracked. That's not true. It is, my father said softly. And deep down, you know it. Something inside Jason snapped then, not gently, not quietly, but violently. You think you're better than us, he shouted. All of you. Your money, your house, your stupid car. You've spoiled Emily so badly she can't even understand real struggle. The air tightened around me. You think she needs a Tesla? He hissed. She has you. That's all she's ever needed. She doesn't work hard for anything, Jason, I breathed. Stop. No. He snapped, turning on me. I'm sick of pretending. You live in some fantasy world where everything falls into your lap. You drive a luxury car while my mother has to patch up her old sedan every month. Do you know how humiliating that is for me? For us, humiliating? I whispered. To see your wife treated well, to see her safe. You don't get it, he spat. You never will. You're just some rich man's daughter playing teacher for fun. My father stepped forward, so fast Jason stumbled back. That is enough, he said coldly. My daughter has worked for everything she has. Her career, her life, her marriage. She gave you every chance. And you repaid her by stealing from her. Jason's voice rose. It wasn't stealing. It was a redistribution of redistribution. My father repeated, incredulous. You are not Robin Hood. You are a fraud. Lightning flashed through the windows, illuminating Jason's face, twisted with anger, desperation, and something darker. And then the front door burst open. Carol stormed in, rain soaking through her coat. Her hair clung to her face, mascara running down her cheeks. She looked wild, frantic. I just got your message, she snapped at Jason. What did you do? Jason rushed to her. Mom, listen, I can fix this. But Carol shoved him aside and pointed at my father. You can't do this, she shouted. You can't call the police on your own son-in-law. My father raised an eyebrow. Watch me. Jason was helping me, she cried. You people have everything, money, houses, cars, and we have nothing. Monica lifted a sheet of paper. Actually, Mrs. Reed, you have quite a lot. Carol froze as Monica calmly read aloud her financial records. You're lying, Carol whispered. You hacked something, you planted this. My father stepped closer. I don't care that you manipulated your son. I care that he dragged Emily down with him. Carol's face twisted. Emily is selfish. She never appreciated my son. He deserves a wife who supports him, not some spoiled princess. I rose slowly, the crackle of the fireplace the only sound beneath her shouting. I supported him, I said quietly. I trusted him. I loved him. And he gave away my car, forged my name, hid debts, and lied every single day? Carol scoffed. You think a car matters? No, I said, trembling but steady. But honesty does. Outside, police lights flashed blue through the rain. Jason froze. No, 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 no. Emily, please tell them this is a misunderstanding. Tell your father to stop. Please. The officer stepped in, hat dripping water onto the floor. Jason backed away. Emily, say something. My father didn't move. Officer, we have evidence of forgery, fraud, and unauthorized transfer of property. The officer nodded. I'll need statements. Carol lunged toward me. You ungrateful little witch, my son gave you everything. No, I said softly. He took everything. Jason's voice broke. Emily, if you do this, we're done. I felt the last thread inside me snap. I know, I whispered. He stared at me, disbelief turning into a hollow kind of grief. You're choosing them, he whispered. No, I said. I am choosing me. The words hung in the air like a verdict. The officer approached Jason again. Sir, come with me. Jason didn't fight. He simply sagged, shoulders collapsing as if the weight of his lies finally crushed him. As they stepped onto the porch, the rain swallowed them. Carol followed, screaming, but her voice faded into the storm. My father closed the door gently. No one spoke. I exhaled, realizing I had been holding my breath for minutes. My father walked toward me, his face softening for the first time that night. Emily, he said quietly, you did the hardest thing a person can do. You told the truth. I leaned into him, not to collapse, but to steady myself, because the storm wasn't over. But for the first time in months, I finally felt safe inside the chaos. When the front door closed behind Jason and the officer, the entire house seemed to exhale. The storm outside softened to a hard drizzle, tapping rhythmically along the gutters. The guests who had witnessed the blow-up quietly drifted away, murmuring their goodbyes, casting me looks that mixed sympathy with shock. It was the kind of night no one forgets. The kind that changes the temperature of a family forever. My father guided me to the sofa near the fireplace. The flames were lower now, flickering instead of roaring, but the warmth eased the tremor in my hands. Sweetheart, he said gently, you don't owe anyone strength right now. But I wasn't collapsing, not anymore. The fear that once tangled itself around my throat was gone, replaced by a strange clarity. A steadiness I hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. Dad? I whispered. I'm okay. He studied my face, searching for cracks, then nodded. He knew I wasn't saying it to make him feel better. I was saying it because it was true. Monica returned from the entryway, brushing rain from her blazer. She sat across from me, setting a folder on the coffee table with a careful, deliberate motion. This, she said, tapping the cover, is everything we need to file for divorce. Clean, airtight, and in your favor. The word divorce didn't sting the way I expected. It didn't feel like failure. It felt like oxygen. Do you want to look at it tonight, she asked? Or tomorrow? I shook my head. Tomorrow. I just need a moment to process. She nodded. Of course. But Emily, don't wait too long. Men like Jason don't disappear quietly. She paused, choosing her words. And they don't give up control without a fight. The flicker of warning didn't scare me. It steadied me. I won't hesitate, I said. Not anymore. Monica gave a small smile, proud, fierce, almost relieved. My father placed a hand on my shoulder, warm and grounding. If he comes near you, he said, if he calls, if he shows up at your school, you let me know immediately. I nodded, though something colder whispered inside me. I don't think he'll come to me first, I said quietly. I think he'll go to her, his mother. She'll tell him I destroyed his life. My father snorted softly. He destroyed it himself. We spent the next hour reviewing just enough details to prepare me without overwhelming me. Timeline, evidence, protection orders. The officer would call tomorrow for my full statement, but my father reassured me that the legal groundwork had already been laid long before tonight. When the storm finally calmed and the guests had gone, I slipped outside to the covered patio, needing air. The backyard smelled of wet earth and pine. The lanterns flickered in the breeze, casting soft shadows along the stone path. Rain clung to the steps where Jason had once carried me during our engagement party, laughing as if the world belonged to us. I used to replay that memory when our marriage got hard. Now it felt like someone else's life entirely. I wrapped my arms around myself, breathing in the cold air, letting the weight of everything settle in its rightful place. Behind me, the sliding door opened. Emily Monica stepped out holding something small, an envelope. A yellowed one, edges soft from age. I wasn't sure if tonight was the right time, she said, but I think your mother would want you to have this now. My breath hitched. It's from Mom. She gave it to me 2 years ago. Asked me to save it for when you needed it. My hands trembled as I took the envelope. The handwriting on the front, my mother's looping script, made my chest ache. I opened it gently, afraid the paper might tear. Inside was a single page. Emily, you ever find yourself giving more than you receive, shrinking so someone else can shine, or apologizing for things that aren't your fault? Walk away. Love should never ask you to disappear. Mom. I pressed the letter to my chest. Tears blurred the ink, the first tears I'd shed all night. Not because of Jason, not because of betrayal, but because my mother had somehow seen the storm years before it formed. Monica touched my shoulder. She trusted you to save yourself. I nodded, wiping my face. And I will. We walked back inside, closing the patio door behind us. My father waited by the fireplace, hands in his pockets, watching me with a softness that made my throat tighten again. Are you ready to go home? He asked. I shook my head. I don't want to go back there, not tonight. He nodded. Stay here, as long as you need. When I finally lay down in the guest room, my childhood room updated but still familiar, I heard the storm picking up again outside. Thunder rolled in the distance, but it felt different now. Less threatening. More like a warning aimed at someone else. Before I turned off the lamp, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We're not done. You'll regret this. No name, no signature. But I didn't need one. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I put the phone down, turned off the light, and let the darkness settle around me. Not in fear, in preparation. Because Jason thought tonight was the end of his story. He had no idea it was the beginning of mine. And he had just handed me the weapon I needed. Before I end this chapter, tell me something. Have you ever felt like the outsider in your own family? Or like someone you trusted used your kindness against you? If this story hit something deep inside you, make sure you subscribe and stay with me. This isn't over. What happened that night was only the beginning of a fight I never expected to face, and I promise you, the truth that comes next is darker, sharper, and far more dangerous than anything you've heard so far. Stay tuned.